fantastic Chris Bonnello.
Thank you very much.
All right, hello. I'm Chris Bonnello. I'm an autistic advocate, speaker, and former teacher, and I'd like to talk to you about the foundational principles behind being inclusive as a speaker, as in how to make sure your speech is accommodating everyone of all neurotypes, rather than just, the people who just would have been accommodated anyway. As is tradition, I'm going to talk about three different things: audience expectations, audience engagement, and the planning stage. So audience expectations, we don't talk enough about the fact that there are a big chunk of neurodivergent audience members who are coping with our speeches rather than actually learning from them. And that might be because of the sensory environment of the venue. It could be because of all those unspoken social expectations. They're always unspoken, aren't they? And it might also be due to the fact that a big bunch of us just aren't neurologically built to sit still for extended periods of time. And my goodness, people don't like that about us. But I used to literally teach GCSE maths with this Rubik's Cube in my hand because, well, I've got one of those autistic brains that works better when my fingers are active. And I know what you're wondering, and the answer is 12 seconds because I'm an enormous nerd.
Thank you.
But I used to give this out to my autistic teenagers in my class when I noticed them getting disengaged. And a big surprise, once these autistic teenagers were playing with toys in the middle of my maths lesson, they were able to learn a lot better. It's almost like we should meet neurodivergent people where they are, rather than making judgmental comments about their behaviour.
Thank you.
In fact, a few weeks ago, I was delivering teacher training to, among other people, an autistic teacher who was very much a doodler. And during my time there, she managed to cover half of an A1 sheet of paper in pure doodling, and I was so happy to see that, because it guaranteed she was listening. Adapt your expectations of us, and trust us, we know what we're doing. Right, second one, audience engagements. We talk a lot about audience engagements, but we often do it with the misconception that your speech is only going well if your audience is either roaring with laughter or obeying your every command. For example, that infamous opening line, loved by speakers but hated by audiences, "Good morning." Pause. "No, we can do better than that. Good morning." My goodness, please don't make demands of your audience before you've done anything to earn their respect, let alone their compliance. But you're not failing at your speech if you're not succeeding in getting us up and moving about, because, well, leaving aside the fact that a big load of us don't do things like that because we're hyper-aware of our own behaviour, after a lifetime of being judged by other people for being different, sometimes, just generally, neurodivergent engagement looks different. And fun fact, that is not a bad thing. When I go to church, I don't stand up and sing hymns. I mean, everyone else does, so I just sit down and continue in prayer. And I have yet to meet the clergy member who successfully comes up to me and says, "Chris, you need to stand up and use your singing voice, otherwise you're not connecting with God properly." And no, that doesn't work, and trust me, God doesn't care. Now, thirdly, the planning stage. So accommodating your neurodivergent audience members doesn't begin when you walk on stage. Obviously, it starts when you sit down and you start your preparations. For example, your slides. Are you making pretty slides, or are you making accessible slides? You can absolutely do both, but there's no point in doing the first one unless you're doing the second one. Accessibility must always come first, must always be the default. Also, are you giving out your information in other forms, like non-spoken forms, for example, handing out handouts at the end? If so, fantastic, brilliant. Tell us at the beginning that you're going to do that. In fact, tell us at the beginning of your speech where your speech is going to go, because life is a lot easier when it's predictable. Do your jokes rely entirely on non-literal humour? Well, if so, don't worry, you can change that. Also, please don't fall into the trap of thinking that autistic people struggle with humour, because, well, we don't struggle with humour, even if our sense of humour looks different and, in my very biased opinion, better than most other people's. But yeah, those are my main takeaways for you today. Adapt your expectations. Allow your neurodivergent audience members to engage with your speech in whichever way resonates with their brain, and have it in mind during the planning stage, not just the literal stage. I'm now going to pass over to Anita Figueroa. Thank you very much.